It gives me great pleasure to warmly welcome you all to the special sunk cost COVID-19 and the maritime industry. This is an integral part of the MBA SBL annual conference. This is the 14th annual conference, the first e-conference, if I'm not mistaken. And as usual, it's been a fun, well-packaged and engaging interaction, the largest interaction of business lawyers on the continent easily. And we are particularly pleased today to have some experts in the industry from various backgrounds. What I'll do is I'll quickly introduce our panel and then give a little introduction and fire away the questions so that we can get the benefit of the wealth of their knowledge. We have Mr. Mansour Azzi, the GM of GM Legal of APM Terminals, one of the concessionaires at the Upper Keys. We have Ms. Hadiza Bala Usman, the MD of Nigerian Port Authority. Very warm welcome. Callistus Ojuku Esquire is a partner at Foundation Chambers, one of the leading law firms in the sector. And Princess Vicky is the chairman of Seaport Terminal Operators of Nigeria. A warm welcome to you as well. And Edema Kelikume is the MD of Connectway Services Limited. So you can see it is a varied panel we have to get perspectives on what is clearly the most topical matter in business and industry today, the effects of COVID-19, the disruptive effects, the opportunities, and how the industry is adjusting. Clearly, there is a dire need to keep all these supply chains working because of the integral and important part that the maritime industry plays in the world economy and in the economy of Nigeria in particular. And I know that many of the players and sectors are working hard to ensure that that continues. So I'm going to devote 10 minutes to each panelist to field 2 questions. And then hopefully we will take a couple of questions, and I mean a couple, maybe 2 questions from our esteemed audience, and then offer you an opportunity to round up your thoughts and reflections on what other panelists have said. My name is Olash Oshashore. It gives me pleasure to anchor this session. We're a partner in ARP, law firm based here in Lagos, Nigeria. So I think we'll start with Mr. Azzi, Mr. Mansour Azzi. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I wish I could see you as well, but I guess the audience can see you.
I can see you.
Yeah. So, as unusual as these proceedings are going to be, it's even more unusual given the fact that COVID-19 is affecting everybody's operations within the sector. But how practical is it for shipping lines and terminal operators to waive demurrage and storage charges that have accumulated during this period of COVID-19 and the lockdown? What would you consider to be the biggest challenge?
Thank you very much. In answering this question, it is important that we look at the background facts and incidences that happen in the wake of COVID-19. As we all know, the federal government, in the wake of COVID-19, declared port terminal services and shipping services as essential duties. As well, in resonance with that, the port terminal operators were not shut down during the height of COVID-19. So, the bottom line is that subsequently, we got a directive from our landlord, Nigerian Ports Authority, to waive storage charges. It was also directed to shipping lines, So permit me to give this background to, the waiver of storage charges or demurrage. In the value chain of the port, you find out that there are studies that have been carried out, and it has been proven mathematically and scientifically that it is way more cheaper for consignees and importers to leave their cargo in the terminal than it is for them to store it, in warehouse, let's say in Lagos, Aba, or Onitsha. So what happens? We find that over the years, regardless of the waiver that port terminal operators have intentionally and willingly granted to importers to decongest the terminal, because basically the terminal is built as a gateway of cargo. Why terminal operators are believed for a reward that we keep custody of containers? The idea is that these containers have to keep moving. You don't have to turn the port terminal into a warehouse. Otherwise, it will have a ripple effect on ship waiting time and vessel turnaround time. So essentially what I'm trying to say, linking into your question, is that in the height of COVID-19, the terminal operators were faced with a lot of sunk costs. I mean, the president of SOAN is here, particularly for us in APM terminal. The value of sunk costs that we spent was close to 700 million. And these are things that arose from medicals, making provision accommodation for our frontline workers. When federal government gave us the go-ahead to keep the port running, given the vital role that the ports play in the economy, it became incumbent upon us, because people come from different parts of Lagos. APMT terminal operators had to incur costs that they never anticipated in housing these workers to make sure that they are available to come to work and keep the economy running. So what happened is that subsequently, when we got the directive from NPA, you will understand that the granting of waiver to importers or to consignees is not actually a contractual or legal obligation. It is more like a palliative that the federal government, in line with the ease of doing business campaign, felt that we need to keep the economy moving and we need to give some palliatives to these consignees. But I can tell you in practical terms that the port terminal operators complied with that directive. The only challenges that were encountered was because virtually all the port operators run on automated system. So there was that few glitches of switching and adjusting the invoices to reflect what the new waiver was. But I can tell you for free, essentially, that waiver that was extended to importers and consignees did not have any remarkable improvement in evacuation of cargo at the port. I may not blame the importers solely. You have to factor in the perennial traffic in Apapa. The Apapa port was established in 1920s. And when you look at the structure, you find out that there has not been any major infrastructural change over these years. So Apapa port has remained essentially the same road. We all know about the traffic and all that. And you have to be fair to the terminal operators. Anything outside the terminal is not within the control of the terminal operators. So what am I trying to say? The terminal operators, we did not have any problem in granting this waiver, because I must be fair to our landlord, NPA. In the letter that they wrote to us, there was an indication that we will have to sit down and work out modalities on how government will help to, to compensate us for whatever we have lost in storage. Bear in mind that terminal operators are in business to make returns because they have made huge investment. In Atta, for instance, since 2006, that the concession was given to APMT, over $436 million have been expended in investment. So what am I trying to say? Government gave the indication that I will compensate you, maybe by way of discounting it from your monthly lease fee, because we have a monthly huge financial obligation to NPA because we are not the owners of the terminal. We're just tenants. So we pay something to government. So we did not even begin to tell government, oh, there has to be a documentation that you will pay us back this money. Virtually all the terminal operators, in line with government intention to pump in stimulus into the economy, complied with this directive. So what will be the implication, on the shipping industry? The implication is fair. Yes, government will lose money if it comes, if it gets to the point where it has to discount from what the receivable it gets from the terminal operators. But the point is this: it's going to help the shipping industries in that consignees will meet their obligation, companies that were shut down will reopen again, warehouses that were shut down will reopen again. Don't forget that in the height of the COVID-19, there was a ban on check clearance. Most banks were not working. Interstate movement was restricted. So this affected truck drivers, this affected importers who ordinarily would go to bank through their agents to pay storage fees and demurrage and all that. So there was that challenges, of which we communicated to NPA, and it was managed. So essentially, I think it's a positive step in that if this concession and if these waivers are granted to importers, it will help them to meet their financial obligation. It should ideally, theoretically, help them to speed up the process of picking up their containers. But what I'm trying to tell you realistically is that the effect was not seen, because leveraging on what we have experienced in the past, the issue of granting waiver for storage is a regular practice with terminal operators. We periodically grant waivers in deserving circumstances. So as I'm talking to you today, the success that was achieved by the terminal operators post-concession in that vessel turnaround went down even as low as 48 hours. In the last couple of months, it has gone up again because there are many vessels waiting at the anchorage, waiting for a free bed to come and bed. So essentially, the waiver is something that we complied with, and it is something that will help to booster the economy so that, before you know it, we should be able to go back to what life was being before this unfortunate pandemic, which is threatening the very foundation of our economy.
In fact, also you've answered my follow-up question by saying, what do you think the implication will be? And it's quite clear that you haven't seen any real difference. It's been disrupted. It's been disrupted, but the congestion has remained.
Let's leave this out.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, it's a very convenient point to ask your landlord's representative, the MD of the MPA. And I know all the innovations that they've put in place to make the ports function with modern realities have clearly been affected by COVID. Nobody could have budgeted for COVID at the beginning of the year. But the MD, given the decrease in port terminal revenue that you've seen as a result of this reduced import-export activities, what government interventions are available to terminal operators with respect to this financial obligations they have with NPA in their concessions? I think you're on mute. Cash, can you get somebody to unmute?
Okay, I'm on now. Okay.
Yes, you're on now.
All right. Thank you so much for organizing this session. It's indeed a platform that will enable us deliberate on issues to sort of provide clarity on certain areas. I've listened to the question by Senior Advocate, and I've also listened to NOSO's submission around the issue of the waiver on rent-free period. We in Nigerian ports felt the need to provide that, recognizing that it has an effect on the turnaround time for vessels. But one of the things that we sought to do is to provide consignees with a cushion, noting that the port operations is a value chain. when federal government opened up the port operations, noting that other aspects are closed down. So when you bring your cargo into the ports, where are you taking them to? You're taking them to a warehouse, you're taking them to a manufacturing site, you're taking them to other locations that have been closed down. So your staff in your location that need those items that have been brought into the country are not at work. So invariably, you are unable to clear your items. This is for even consignments that are within the Lagos area. Then you have the state lockdown. So if I have my cargo coming into Lagos and I need to take them to Port Harcourt or to Kaduna, I can't transverse those states to get there. So invariably, I'm stuck in the port, and that is why Nigerian ports felt the need to grant that to people. That is a problem for us because it will now fill up the terminal yard. There will not be enough space. It will affect the turnaround time for vessels and all such. But recognizing that even if you open the ports and the other larger value chain is not functional, it's difficult for you to evacuate any cargo and take it on. And just to reference that, Nigerian ports, for each waiver that is given for rent-free, we're giving the terminal operators credit notes for that portion. So if you now give 10 million naira of rent-free for the period in COVID, Nigerian ports is refunding you with that exact 10 million naira in form of credit notes. So for you as a terminal operator, you're really not losing anything. It is the federal government of Nigeria that is losing that amount of revenue that it could have gotten from yourselves for that period. So it's not as relates to a lease fee, but specific to you gave a waiver for rent-free for 10 million and government has reimbursed you your 10 million. So for you as a terminal operator, you don't lose anything. What you could lose is the efficiency in the operations of your port, the turnaround time of your vessels, and the need for enhanced evacuation of cargo. I would also like to quickly reference the issue of the whole value chain, speaking about the banks. When the lockdown was initially started, in the first few days, banks were not operational, and I quickly called the central bank governor, and I think within 12 hours, we had a meeting with the deputy governor, central bank, the MDs of banks all logged onto the meeting, and we allowed for banks to open in the whole of the Apapa and Tinkan Island area, and they asked their branches to open to enable service for port operations, and anything to do with payment of custom duties, agents paying for clearance of cargo were allowed, and they were giving that window. So all banks in those corridors were given the permission to operate. They were given the time period with which they would function, and that was something that we did, and we got an efficient turnaround time for turnaround from central bank. Within 24 hours, we had those meetings with the MDs, and they had opened up. So that issue that the whole structure around port operation is not just limited to the vessels coming in. There's a whole system, and when you look at now, there's a reduced consumption on a lot of items because we're not buying as much, we don't have that much spending power. That automatically now affects the people that are producing. Any cargo that comes, you had anticipated sale of your products, but they're not moving. So that is, I would say, an attendant effect that we're going to see in the whole economy as a whole. Looking at the issue on port operations is recognizing it is in and out. So if there is a limited demand for cargo that comes into the country, there's an attendant effect on what it is that we utilize, what it is that we need. And in the same vein, if we're not able to, when the states have their lockdowns, if you have items for export, those agri-produce cannot come because Kaduna is locked down, Ogun is locked down. So all of these things has an effect of inflow and outflow. It's the same thing with also vessels coming in. They also have that challenge with turnaround time. I'll quickly speak to the issue on, let's understand the efficiency of port also has to do with the efficiency of equipment of the terminal operators. So while you have the outside portion of the congestion in Apapa area and the need for us to ensure that we streamline inflow and outflow, we also need to ensure our terminal operators have the improved equipment to offload the cargo of the vessel. You need to have the necessary crane, the necessary improved infrastructure within your terminal. And we had that incident with APMT where we did not see commensurate investment in equipment and infrastructure to enable you take on those volumes of cargo that are needed. And having gone through that, now you've brought in the necessary cranes. Now we see an improved operation. So let's understand that this issue of operational efficiency is both ways. If you don't have the cranes that can move the cargo of the vessel, that is an issue. So quickly speaking to the issue on the Apapa congestion, one of the things that I've said over the years is the need to have designated places for the trucks to sit and wait for a call-up. If we don't have those designated places for trucks to sit and only come trucks to be called upon, the trucks will get up in the morning and drive to the ports and just keep on and keep on. So Lagos State government must take ownership in providing dedicated truck terminals where there will be a linkage and call-up with the terminal operators and Nigerian ports. But when we have 36 number truck locations, truck yards all around the Apapa environment. So how do you think you're going to sanitize that when in that Apapa environment you have 36 number truck parks that lack any form of equipment? So for me, I always advocated for, let's have, there should be, within the port corridors, we shouldn't have mushroom and truck parks. We should have larger truck parks that are outside of the port environment, dedicated for that, and you only come in when you are using a call-up system. Nigerian Ports is not responsible for providing truck terminals. But we know that truck parks are a local government issue, a state issue. So Lagos State government was rise up to that and provide those. We in Nigerian Ports have given up Lily Pond, APM to you as operators of Lily Pond. We cancelled that to make Lily Pond a transit truck park. We have created that, and we are now in an advanced stage of discussing and concluding with Lagos State to make available a larger trailer park. The Ahmed Bola Tinubu trailer park in Orile would be so designated as a trailer park that only trucks that transverse 1, 2, 3 number truck parks will not be able to access the port. And recognizing that these other mushroom truck parks would have their own submissions, we have a criteria. For you to be licensed as a truck park, you must have 1, 2, 3, 4, you must have electronic call-up, you must have X number to sort of reduce that profilation of truck parks. And even for, I'll say, land use issues, why should you have a truck park inside a proper area? I don't think we should, Lagos State should look at the land use issue attributable to trailer park. There's some locations in Apapa, why should there be a truck park? No, that place is too congested already. We should push it out of the town. I've also discussed with Ogun State Governor, we also now have a truck park in Ogun, so those are coming out of Lagos. You now stay in Ogun State. When you are called up, you move to Orile. When you are called up, you now move to Lily Pond, then you get into the ports. You can't just have everybody, and that, once you do that, then there's issue of compliance. Okay, state government, LASMA, road safety, we all have to get in there to ensure and enforce compliance. We also have to recognize that within the Apapa corridors, we also have the tank farms. So there are petroleum products evacuations that are done in that area, and you also have attendant congestion arising from that. So these are the issues, and I think the larger picture is the need for us to recognize using intermodal transportation system. You can't have 90% of your cargo being pushed through by the road. The road would get congested and it will spoil invariably. We must strengthen our utilization of inland waters. We must also drive and have our rail connection concluded. We've reached an advanced stage. If without COVID, we would have at least concluded on the utilization of the rail. There exists utilization of rail right now, but it's so marginal that we don't feel it because it's really very, very limited. So I would like to just stop at this point and then we'll continue.
You see, we can here see the connection between the different elements of value chain and how in your response, MD, you've been able to show that if certain other elements are not fixed, the ports themselves will always have this challenge, and therefore the terminal operators will feel these. It's a holistic repair job that needs to be done to really get things. I think it's good for me to make a full disclosure here. My full disclosure is that not only is Hadiza my friend, but I used to serve under her on the board of MPA. So Nonso, it's not as if I'm anti-terminal operator.
Not under me, you were my boss.
I'm very, very well versed with the MPA policy side of things, and I'm very cognizant with your concession agreements. And because of that, I just want to come back to the point. Is there any chance that they will get a reduction on rents payable? And is it possible, given the fluctuation in the value now, these rents can be remitted in naira? Any chance of that?
Yeah, we lost you. There's a lot of echoing. If members could actually mute themselves, they're not speaking.
I don't know what that was, but I'm saying just, I know Nonso will have a pushback later on, but is there any possibility that the rents payable from operators could be paid in naira, given the situation with forex in the country now?
Have obligations in US dollars that are attributable to port operations. So it will be collect naira and exchange it for dollars. So we're looking at how we can also reduce a portion of our outflows to be in naira, and that way we can now have a commensurate inflow in dollars. So we've run those numbers, and we're looking at our third-party contractors to also let them know that a portion of your own payments would be in naira, so that we can now reflect same thing for our own inflows. So this is something that we're working on, running the numbers to balance it, so that we can have a clarity on what comes in which currency, and make the respective payments.
Yeah.
And also, let's remember, sir, that the shipping industry is also in dollars. Are you people collecting naira? So let's also remind you, all the ship vessels that come, did they pay NGN or did they pay USD?
I knew it anyway, but it's interesting to learn that once some of the outgoings of the authority can be denominated in naira, it will give a little more circumference. So that's hope rising, one day. And to move to somebody who collects dollars for its legal fees, and this just let's go backwards in the value chain. I mean, the shipping documents. Do you think that any adjustments need to be made in view of the COVID-19 pandemic? Do you think any adjustments need to be made in the standard bills of lading to cater for this sort of situation that nobody could have foreseen before? Do you think there is any, and what are the adjustments that come to mind?
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'll go straight to the issue, and I will say that the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic necessitated certain safety measures from the government. And however, these measures have inadvertently impacted negatively on the stakeholders in the shipping industry. For example, the lockdown and the closure of border flight stoppages have occasioned some challenges to crew changes. It's so difficult for crew to come on board and replace those that are already there. Another instance is the 14-day quarantine restrictions, the congestion at the ports, unavailability of pilots and cargo. These also continue to occasion some delay when vessels call at the ports. So the issue can be addressed by looking at the bills of lading, or seeing how clauses can come into an existing bills of lading to address these issues. And I'll look at two main bills of lading: standard ocean bills of lading, and bills of lading issued pursuant to charter party agreement. The first one, which is the ocean bill of lading, is usually issued by established shipping lines for the day-to-day carriage of goods from one part of the world to another part of the world. And they already have existing clauses, and they are protective of the shipping lines. You hardly ever find any clause in such a standard bill of lading that would go contrary to the contrary to the terms of the shipping line. So looking at that, you find that certain such bills of lading will usually have a clause that relates to government directions, what will happen when government issues a direction, or the issue of war or issue of epidemic. An example of such bill of lading is a cogent bill of lading. And the summary is to the effect that a master or the owner of the vessel have the liberty to comply with order of or directions or recommendations given by a government. Another instance, another issue is where it appears, among other things, that there is an epidemic or quarantine or lockdown either on board the vessel or offshore, which is likely to prevent the vessel from leaving the ports or offloading or reaching or entering the port of discharge. The master of the crew may discharge the cargo at any port nearby, you know, and yes, and the merchants will bear the costs, including the cost of freight. So in a nutshell, merchants are not assured of any waivers pursuant to a standard bill of lading in the light of the delays being occasioned as a result of COVID-19. However,
so the bills of lading right now are not designed to accommodate any of these unexpected charges as a result of COVID-19.
Yes, for this type of bill of lading, where what can happen is the government coming in to make some demands, and by virtue of a clause or some clauses contained in the bills of lading, they are bound to, or they have a discretion to listen to the government. In most cases, they do. Like the case in point is Shippers Council also gave a directive, you know, to shipping lines to grant waivers to importers that imported goods from the 31st of March this year, and they granted that directive, and they responded. Another instance also from the MPA, you know, to terminal operators, in which case the MPA also went ahead to bear the brunt, you know. So in that regard, government can come in, and the provisions of the bills of lading allowed the shipping lines to accommodate such demands. The other bill of lading that I will talk about is the bills of lading issued pursuant to charter party agreements, and that essentially comes about because there's an existence of the owner of the ship, the vessel, and charterers, be it voyage charter, be it time charter, or be it bareboat charter, you know, and they have that latitude to enter into agreements. And what has happened, looking at the COVID-19 issue, is owners are beginning to want to leverage on an existing bill of lading clause, that being called bill of lading infectious on or contagious diseases clause. It's a 2015 clause, and
To accommodate the current situation, there's a clause there that is flexible enough to deal with the current situation, isn't there?
Yes, there's also a specific clause, that's an intertanko clause, which has been drafted specifically for the COVID-19 issue. And is an issue because it is also protective of the owners, you know, because the clause says the owner or the master of the vessel, if he reasonably believes that there is an infection within an area, within a port or within a country or region, that he can decide not to take the order of the charterer. And you know that if you are having a time charter or voyage charter, the charterer has the right to give instructions to the master of the vessel. You know, and when it has to do with COVID-19, and they say you cannot give us instruction when it has to do with an area that we reasonably believe is infected with this virus, and that would endanger the lives of crew members or anybody on board the vessel, we are not obliged to take that instruction from you. And even when they decide to take, yes, please.
I'm going to have to cut you short because I know this is your comfort zone and it's a very interesting area. Seeing how at least the contractual provisions have given us some latitude. I'm going to cut you short. We'll come back to it because I don't want too much time to pass between the time when the regulator spoke and some of the other key actors in the value chain. So I'd like to call on Princess Vicky Hastrop, who's the chairman of the Seaport Terminal Operators of Nigeria, to see if we can get some balance here, so that I'm not accused of overly supporting my own constituency, the regulator. So, Princess Hastrop, the chairman, can everybody put on their videos? I mean, I think people have switched off their video. You can actually put on your video. The other panelists, can they put on their video? Okay, Princess Hastrop, the economic impact of COVID-19 on the shipping industry, we all now know, has been quite disruptive. What practical steps can shipping companies and terminal operators adopt in order to reduce their loss due to the decrease in import and export activities? And how does that compare with how the regulator has conducted itself regarding your interests?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. And Andy, particularly, I
Well, buying for the MD, buying for the MD.
You want to know the impact COVID had to the shipping industry. And, you know, like it's been said, impact is quite enormous. Like other sectors, keeping trade flowing by ensuring customer service delivery at the port is really quite significant to us. It's not just for the sake of it, but for the sake of the national economy and the well-being of the Nigerian people. I'm really happy to say that we've enjoyed enormous support, particularly from the Nigerian Port Authority. I want to say a big thank you to my sister and my boss, the MD of Nigerian Port Authority. We've enjoyed tremendous support from Nigerian Port Authority and the relevant government agency. And we've really been able to sustain, you know, and stay afloat in all odds. Having said that, I don't think any sector can truly quantify the loss it suffered. Neither will it be fully recover from the fiscal loss resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. I think you just have to deal with it.
We have to.
Where we are. And move on that one day this pandemic will leave us alone and go. But at this point, we don't even know when that
We don't know. We don't know. And since, Princess, since we don't know, from the point of view of the operators, don't you think this vexed situation, this vexed question of automated scanners, don't you think it's about time? What are your views? What's the view of the association when it regards to this physical inspection of containers?
Yeah, at the moment, we have a problem where people must visit the port physically to do their custom examination.
Particularly in these COVID times.
Particularly in this COVID time, and that's really not safe. Not safe for anyone. It's not safe for port operators, not safe for customs service, not safe for port, everyone that is operating within the sector. I think, that the customs service do not have quality scanner in the port. I see it as a serious shame. The Nigerian customs service must do everything possible to install functional scanners at the port to reduce the high rate of physical examination of cargo that will ultimately reduce human contact and human traffic in the area. And terminal operators, we didn't see that forthcoming. For 10 years now, we do not have serviceable scanners in the port. Some ports don't even have at all, like I do not have in my terminal. We've suggested to them that the terminal operators will not mind to invest and install scanner in our port, if we are so engaged to do it for such services. Of course, it won't be for free. We have to recoup whatever investment that that we made on procurement of such or provision of such scanner. But nobody has said anything about it. We're still waiting, and customs service hasn't done anything, which I do not think for the Nigerian people. So there is the need for the deployment of autonomous systems to pave way for a cheaper, more efficient cargo clearance process at the port. Customs should make it possible for consignees to process their release documents and make necessary duly payment online without having to visit. I don't know why that has been frustrated year in, year out. We know what that will mean. I want to believe that the customs service, people operating within that service, they would rather prefer human interface. I mean, some people might not find it funny that I'm saying that, but that's the truth. They really prefer, they will frustrate everything that will prevent human interface. And when there is human interface, you know what that means. I mean, I don't need to say it loud and clear. You know, it's not about corruption. So federal government, it's up to federal government to stand up and see to it that scanners are provided at the port. And the terminal operators we've made offer. We said we can provide.
Yeah, Princess.
Our investment. So
we hope and believe that at the end of this conference, representations will be increased again regarding automation. If COVID has taught us nothing at all, it has taught us that IT and automation needs to be, horribly introduced into all aspects of the value chain.
Exactly. The customer service particularly needs to be smart at this point. Nigeria poor. The port in Nigeria must operate on one-stop shop, as one-stop shop. But we cannot do that when you do not have, a scanner.
I'm running out of time. I'm running out of time, Princess, but I hope I'll find time to come back to you. Because I know that the logistics people need to get a word in so that we can get a wholesome view of the entire industry. And this vexed problem of the empty boxes. Edeme Kelekume is the MD of Connect Rail and Service Limited. Edeme, could you just chip in? What challenges have you faced as a logistics provider this aspect of the empty boxes. It's a crisis, isn't it? Empty containers.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir, Mr. San. And also greetings to everybody on the panel, especially Madam Hastrop and the MD of MPA. I don't know if there's a bigger word than a crisis to describe what is going on with the empty container situation that we have today. The implication runs into billions. I mean, literally billions of naira is what the shippers have to suffer. We run the multimodal business, serving two key segments, corporate and retail segments. And what we have experienced is that the people that suffer the most from this empty container crisis are the retail or the SME shippers, the agents and the guys bringing in one container, two containers. They don't have the clout. They don't have the capacity to be able to engage with the shipping line and terminal operators to manage the outcome of this demurrage implication on the empty containers. Today, the problem is basically twofold. One is from the angle of the having access to accessible locations where you can drop your empty containers. There are few holding bays that are located close to the port, but this is far from being adequate. There needs to be more holding bays across the city, and if possible across the country, where these empty containers can be conveniently dropped. Today, a shipper goes to the port, struggles to get into the port, either by truck or by rail or by however means, and you manage to take your empty containers, you take your laden boxes out. Now, when you manage to even get your containers to your warehouse, you discharge your containers, there are so many times when you're coming back with your truck or with your barge or with your rail, and you are already at the point of getting into the port, and the terminal is telling you that this shipping line is not accepting your containers. What do? You are forced to now look for alternatives at very high cost. Okay, and besides the shipper has paid for the service, and you're stuck in your cost in the middle. The other end is at the terminals. Most terminals are not providing enough infrastructure to receive the empty containers. So when you manage to even bring the empty containers either by barge or by rail to the ports, you are not even sure how quickly your cargo will be attended to. So like the MD said earlier on, there's a dearth of equipment to service the vehicles, either barges or trucks or rail that brings in these empty containers, and you are not sure how long how long you have to wait, and there's no consideration for the cost implication of that delay by the terminal operators to the logistics service providers. Yeah. So I think I'll just stop there. But for that's a major problem that we're having right now. Two key problems in the industry, which the shipper has to suffer a lot of times, and there are lots of cases on this as we speak right now.
Yeah, lots of disputes around this problem. I mean, what steps do you think the port owners, the port regulator, the operator can take to ensure that this reduces?
MPA has a huge role. MPA has a huge role to play here. MPA they've done very well, kudos to the current management in trying to reform the industry, but there's still a lot to be done. The shipping lines must be, for want of a better word to use, compelled to provide locations where empty containers can be dropped. They have to be compelled, because if you don't provide those locations where empty containers can be dropped, you don't have any right to now charge demurrage where the shipper is struggling to look for where to drop the empty containers. And every day the container is with the shipper, there's a cost to hold your empty container. Who bears that cost? Nobody talks about it. Yep. So it's important for the shipping lines to provide that alternative. It is also very important for the terminals to operate under some sort of an SOP that guides the entire operation. So there must be a time for everything, and there must be implications for failures from all the parties. If the barges or the trucks don't come at a specific time, there will be an implication. And if you meet your time schedule and you're not attended to at the right
time, the KPIs have got to have.
You're not attended at the right time.
Yeah, the KPIs have got to have teeth.
Exactly. Very important.
Yes, okay. Quickly speak to the issue of the empty containers. We had sanctioned the shipping companies for non-availability of empty container holding bays. This was in early 2019, and we had given a modality with which every shipping company is required to take out the equivalent number of boxes they bring in every month. And non-compliance to that is supposed to lead to a sanctioning. We had actually refused to renew licenses from shipping companies due to non-provision of empty container holding bays. So within the period, there hasn't been tracking. I think that is the problem. I've noted it down. I'm going to call the people in Marine and Operations to reconfirm. We actually issued that. We refused to renew licenses of shipping companies. They had to give evidence of empty container holding bay that was commensurate to the volumes they bring in. Because some of the shipping companies have huge volumes, then they have this tiny little holding bay that is not adequate for the volume they bring in. And that typically just takes everything away. So we had done that, and they had complied and giving those locations. But I think what it is that it fell through the cracks in terms of monitoring to ensure that they complied to that. So they encourage stakeholders to write directly to us to the extent that you have identified this gap, and then I will also push that in our systems to ensure that there's adequate monitoring of that. But some of you may recall the period where the shipping companies, we refused the renewal of their licenses. They must provide empty container holding bays. And what is important is also beyond the cost of the empty containers, the consignees is also a sort of dumping ground that Nigeria had for containers. So you see, the shipping company has gotten X thousand containers, but not take the commensurate number of containers out. So what happened to those containers? Where are they? And that attendant cost was also, if I have a container and I'm allowed to drop it in a location, their concern is they don't want to bear the cost of transporting the empty container into the terminal. That is what the shipping companies had been avoiding, and we had insisted that everybody go and drop in the empty container holding bay. But I think what happened is the monitoring and ensuring that there's compliance is what fell through the cracks, and I'll get our team to get back on it by next week so that we can ensure that these shipping companies adhere to what was agreed in terms of maintaining a balance of what you bring in is exactly what you take out, and providing those empty container holding bays that are commensurate to the volumes of cargo that they bring in.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
That's what we love to hear. That's what SBL is known for. Let me just take, I'll be remiss if I don't look at the what our valuable audience is saying and try and push at least 2 questions to the panel, and then I'll give you 1 minute each to wrap up. I think this will be for Callistus. It's from Olamipo Akisilure. Can a party to a charter party agreement invoke your clause where it was unable to make payment due to bank closure and government restrictions? Callistus, you have 1 minute in response to that.
Yeah. Thank you. I've actually responded, and my response is that issues in relation to force majeure must be clearly stated at the time of negotiating the charter. If it is not specifically stated that such will amount to force majeure,
yes, it must be specifically expressly stated. And then there's one quick one here for you, Hadiza, again. What with the global is from Osahon Uhunaho. With the global advancement in technology, particularly the shipping industry, one will expect more movement in automation in the Nigerian Ports Authority. Now that you're landlords and your operations are reduced, is there any case for more automation?
Absolutely. We have been driving the need to have the single windows come on board in the last since I started at Nigerian Ports. Customs has been leading on that, and there has been a lot of pushback. As Princess Hastrop has mentioned, the need to reduce human intervention is key when it comes to rent seeking in the cargo clearance system. So we have been pushing Nigerian Customs to deploy the single windows. Within the component of the single windows has the port community system. We have reached the end of our patience, I would say. In the last 1 month, Nigerian Ports has decided to go ahead and institute the ports community system in isolation of the single windows, because the pushback from Customs has lasted 4 years, and we will not wait. But in the part that reduces rent seeking is tied to the Customs side of the automation. our side of the automation is really to improve on monitoring and regulatory aspects, but the part that really will have an impact on the industry, will have an impact on rent seeking and the improvement on cargo clearance is tied to the customs service. They are in the process of unveiling a e-customs project. To what extent will that address the issues that are attributable to this, the need to have a single windows is what we, I think, need to see. But on our own side, we're going to, drive the community system, because we had felt it's important for it to come as a turnkey structure with the single windows. But having waited for this long, we feel that we'll just go ahead and start the process of the port community system. So automation is key in all aspects, and we must drive that to reduce human intervention.
Great. We look forward to, the industry looks forward to more automation. Right, we've got 2 minutes left, so a quick rapid fire. I'm going to go around the panel and just give me one thing that you'd like to see change the most in the industry value chain. Not so quick fire.
Thank you very much. And let me use this opportunity to re-echo what Mrs. Hastrop had said. We as terminal operators are very, very grateful. We're very, very grateful to NPA. But above all, I mean, one major issue is that we need to drastically look at the issue of concession, the issue of port congestion, and also the relationship between the concessionaires and government regulators, and clear out some gray areas to make sure that the terminal operators who had invested billions in the economy, get adequate and commensurate return for their investment. But above all, we thank NPA for all their efforts. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Right, you managed to take everybody's time. So I will just throw I think we can only let Callisto say, what do you think the industry needs most in one word to change? What would you think the industry value chain needs to see change the most in one word?
I think, I'm sorry to say, custom has been a menace in the total chain. And yes, and if anything has to be done, it has to start from there. The total overhauling has to start from customs.
Cash, I'm sure I'm just about in time. Our sign-off time was 12:40, 12:41. I must thank each one of you for making the time to make this a very interactive session. Princess Vicky Hastrop, Nonso Azini, Callisto Sojuko, and my very own Hadiza Bala Usman. Thank you very much to each one of you for making this a huge success. And I'm sure we'll meet again soon on the field of the maritime industry. Thank you. My name is Elisha Chancellor. This session has just ended.